So I just let her know that I sent the, here she is.
Ellen, are you there? Looks like you're muted. Go ahead and unmute, Ellen. We can't hear you.
Sorry about that. No, I don't know why I wasn't let in, but it's okay now. So I apologize for making everyone wait. That was not my intent.
No worries.
Are we ready to get started?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. It's nice to, whoops, you keep disappearing on me here. It's nice to see everyone. I want to welcome all the members of the committee and the staff. It's great. I think everyone knows each other, except I see, Alan, I'm not sure people saw your face last time. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Alan Alton. I'm the Deputy Finance Director.
Welcome. And then Sue, I don't know if people know you either. So if you could introduce yourself, that would be great.
Sure. I've met some of you, but I know not all of you. I'm Sue Gallagher, and I'm the city attorney, and I was invited to attend today.
Great. Thank you for being here. We want to thank everyone for being here. And again, I apologize for, I don't know what happened, but I'm sorry that I was late. It's nice to see all of you. So I need to call the meeting to order. So I'd like to ask the recording secretary for roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair Bailey. So Chair Bailey,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Minor,
Here.
Member Hinnant,
Present.
Member Atkinson,
Here.
Member Rodermo,
Here.
and Member Staff.
Here.
All right, let the record show that all subcommittee members are present.
Great, thank you. We have some housekeeping I have to remind you of. Please keep your audio on mute unless you are speaking. Staff will remain muted until they need to speak also. As members of the public join the meeting, you will be participating as an attendee, and your microphone and camera will be muted. Only today's panelists will be viewed during the meeting. If you are calling in from a telephone and choose to speak during the public comments portion of today's agenda, for privacy concerns, the host will be renaming your viewable phone number to resident and renaming it, yes, so that people don't know your phone number, and then they will add the last 4 digits of your phone number. Let's see, it's time for me to ask the recording secretary to explain how public comments will be heard at today's meeting.
Thank you, Chair Bailey. At each agenda item, the item is presented. The chair will ask for committee members' comments and then open it up for public comment. The host in Zoom will be lowering all hands until public comment is open for the agenda item. Once the chair has called for the public comment, the chair will announce for the public to raise their hand if they wish to speak on specific agenda item. If you're calling in to listen to the meeting audibly, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. The host will then call on the public who have raised their hands. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and a timer will appear on the screen for the committee members and public to see. Once all live public comments have been heard, the meeting host will read emails submitted. If you provided a live public comment on an agenda item, but also submitted an email, your email comment will not be read during the meeting. Additionally, there is 1 public comment period on today's agenda to speak on non-agenda matters, which is item 2. This is the time when any person may address the committee on matters not listed on the agenda. And with that, Chair Bailey, I'll turn it back over to you. You're muted.
Sorry about that. We are now taking public comments on item 2, non-agenda matters. This is the time when any person may address the committee on matters that are not listed on the agenda. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Do we have people from the public that want to speak?
I am seeing no hands raised.
Okay, great.
No emails were received either.
Okay, so do we need to read all the instructions about what to do? Or shall we just move on to approval of the minutes?
Approval of the minutes.
Okay, approval of the minutes. We need someone to make a motion for the approval of the minutes from the meeting that was held on April 28th. Do we have someone on the committee who will do that?
So moved.
Mark?
I second.
Great, thank you. And now we,
All in favor?
thank you, all in favor. Say aye.
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 And those not in favor, anyone? Thank you. Thanks, Yvette, for reminding me. Okay, let's move on now to item 4.1. The title of 4.1 is the fiscal year 2021-22 Measure O program budget to review and approve by motion the Measure O program budgets for fiscal year 2021-22. My understanding is that we're going to hear from the city attorney first. Is that right?
That's correct. And thank you for those that invited me. And I'm here because I understand that there have been some questions raised about the committee's role in reviewing the Measure O budget. I did send an email that lays all this out, but I only sent it about a half an hour ago, so I apologize for that late timing. So I'll walk through it if that's acceptable to the chair. So as you're, I'm sure aware, the subcommittee, the Oversight Committee was established pursuant to Measure O itself, to section 3-26-120. That's, I'm sure, the section that everyone focuses on. That includes the expenditure plan and other provisions. So the language of that section is what defines the scope of your role as you review the budget. And that section does give the committee three responsibilities, three areas of authority. The first, and really from my perspective, the most important, is to ensure compliance with the expenditure plan that's set forth in Measure O. So as you know, and give a little bit of background first and then go into what the committee's role is. Measure O, of course, is a special tax. It was enacted pursuant to state law, received voter approval, both in the original form and with the amendment in 2016. And by state law, any special tax measure must include an expenditure plan that defines what the specific purposes of the tax is. So it states, the expenditure plan will state very specifically the authorized uses of the tax proceeds. And that's again by the government code and the tax and revenue code. And by state law, use of the tax proceeds is limited to those uses and purposes that are set forth in the expenditure plan. For Measure O, the expenditure plan is set forth in paragraphs A through E of section 3-26-120. And those provisions I know you're all very familiar with. Paragraph A that sets forth the permissible uses of the tax proceeds. It identifies 5 categories for police, 4 categories for fire, and 4 categories for gang prevention and youth programs. And paragraph B sets forth the percentage allocations, 40% for police, 40% for fire, and 20% for the gang prevention youth programs. And then paragraph C through E provide some specifics under specific circumstances, you know, how much can be spent for what purpose. So that's the expenditure plan. So paragraph H, which establishes the Citizens Oversight Committee, it states that the establishment is for the purpose of the committee annually reviewing the expenditures and appropriations of tax revenues to ensure that all such revenues are spent or appropriated for the purposes and uses set forth in paragraph A, in accordance with the allocation percentages set forth in paragraph B, and is specifically authorized in paragraph C, D, and E. So again, that's the expenditure plan. So your responsibility under that provision is to ensure that the city's expenditures as proposed in the budget stay within the parameters of the expenditure plan, again, of paragraphs A through E. And in undertaking that review, you are acting really in an enforcement capacity, enforcement role. You're ensuring that the directives that are set forth in Measure O are honored. And in this task, you do not have a policy role and you don't have authority to modify the elements that are set forth in the expenditure plan. And when I say no authority to modify, either to broaden those, certainly you couldn't broaden them to allow tax proceeds to be spent for other purposes, nor can you narrow them. So nor can you say, no, city, you can only spend the tax proceeds for X, Y, and Z and not for the other categories that are listed in the expenditure plan. I recognize that this is really you're making sure that the measure is being honored, that may be frustrating to some. But I really want to emphasize that this is key for accountability to the voters and to the general public. The existence and this work by this committee assures voters that their wishes, as was demonstrated in their support for the measure, that those wishes are respected. And that in adoption of a special tax measure, that's often very critical, that the voters have confidence that what they have voted on, in fact, will be respected and honored going forward. So really for this exact reason, most special tax measures across the state include an element of a citizen oversight committee or citizen oversight commission. It's very common, very traditional to have that included. So that's one of the three areas of authority for the committee. The second is to issue the annual report on expenditures and appropriation. Again, this is another important tool to ensure accountability for the voters and the general public, and make sure that the requirements and boundaries of the measure are being honored. And then there's a third category, which is third authority in that paragraph H, which is that the committee, quote, shall undertake such additional duties as the council may designate. So this is where there's flexibility for the committee. I'm not aware at this point, I'm not aware that the council has taken that action or taken any action to give you additional responsibilities or additional tasks or additional responsibilities, but that is expressly authorized by Measure O. So the council could always take that on and ask for you to provide advice on things or take any other action that it desires. So I'm happy to answer any questions or hear any concerns or respond. So. No questions.
Concerns you want to share? Anyone on the committee? Now's your chance.
I appreciate you breaking that down, and especially the honing in on the paragraph H and the flexibility about what this committee could potentially be, because I think that that's some of what was starting to come up in the conversation the last time, and that maybe there's some possibility there for there to be more responsibility here. So anyway, thank you for talking us through that.
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah,
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Gallagher, for that great presentation. I wanted to ask, in your opinion, if an organization is receiving funds and they're currently being have been under investigation for abuses of certain types by the city council, and have been and investigations come out, and faults on multiple systems have been found. uh, how do committees usually react to, for example, if an organization is getting funding and things come to light and it's what how do things move after when things come to light, like things of that nature, like like almost, I think you understand my point, right? Like if a nonprofit is being funded, things come out about the nonprofit, but funding has already been set. How do committees usually act?
For an oversight committee, it is fairly limited, again, unless the council takes action. If an expenditure would be unlawful, I would think that the committee would raise those concerns. But particularly as you're reviewing the budget right now, you're looking forward, and does this budget comply with the expenditure plan of Measure O? And that's kind of the limit. In order to address if there are broader concerns, I'm of course very familiar with the concerns regarding police and the different reforms that are going on in connection with police. If there was a desire to change what Measure O provides, that would require a vote of the electorate. So what would have to happen would be if those percentages wanted to be changed, if you wanted to refine how and when I say you, I mean not necessarily the committee, but as individuals, if you were interested in reshaping what the expenditure plan provides, that would require placing a measure on the ballot to revise those provisions. And then it would be subject to the vote, and if it passed, that would then substitute for the existing Measure O.
Okay, a follow-up question I wanted to ask is, just for example, if we were funding an organization, right? They're in the expenditure plan, and they're found to, abuses have been found, right, and filed. Are you saying that there isn't some type of, because for example, an organization, bad things are found out, would the monies, they would still be receiving the funding because it's in that plan, even though that organization has been found for unlawful behavior and things like that? They would still get the money?
That is not the role of the oversight committee. That would be the role of the city council as it approves the budget. If it learned that, the city council is the one that decides where the budget, decides ultimately how the budget is constructed, where the monies are allocated within the budget. Your role is just to make sure that the categories of expenditures match up with the categories of the expenditures that are allowable under the Measure O. Again, if you wanted to change that, that would require a ballot measure and passage of that by the voters. But again, what you are certifying is, yes, this proposed budget does align with the provisions of Measure O. And I do want to emphasize again, it's a very important role. I think it feels to some like, well, so that's all we're doing is just acknowledging that it's in compliance with the measure. We really want to do something more. Again, maybe the council could authorize you to do more. But I will say I've worked with other oversight committees and have seen examples of where budget proposals have come in that have gone beyond what is provided in the special tax expenditure plan. And so those have been caught and reined in by oversight committees in other settings, not the Measure O committee per se, but in others that I've worked with. So it is an important role.
Okay, nice. Thank you. That clears up some things. And I mean, and I'm sorry I'm speaking an example, but I think, I might as well just speak since we're all in the committee. I did raise this question
Sure.
about the police department because,
Mhm.
as you know, they've currently, I don't know if other members on the committee are aware, but they were, the city council did initiate an investigation on human rights abuses by an outside agency. And the police department was found at fault on multiple levels of certain abuses. This is, it's online public information. And much of that has been tied to, a lack of a police auditor for the last couple years that hasn't been hired, and just certain racial bias trainings that are only occurring every 2 years. So, Ms. Gallagher, I want to ask you, would it be in our direction to say that, we understand the expenditure plan, but pass this choice to the city council to decide if we feel as though, an organization is not, even though they're in the plan and it is legal, we don't feel that they are fit to continue that responsibility of carrying out the duties that were originally produced in this Measure O ordinance?
Not as a committee. You're certainly free as individuals to express your concerns to the council, but as a committee, your responsibility is simply to ensure that with respect to the police, they are not receiving more than 40% of the tax proceeds, and that those are the tax proceeds are being allocated to either the police patrol services, police traffic control services, and so forth down those 5 categories. As long as what's being proposed going forward is within, for this coming year, is within those 5 categories and is within the 40%, that is where your responsibility ends. Again, as individuals, you're free to express to the council your concerns and your preference as to the police department budget, but that is the decisions on the police budget are within the authority and discretion of the council itself.
Okay, but if we vote no, it will go to the city council to decide.
If you vote no on the budget, what you would be saying to council would be this budget does not comply with either the 40% limit or the
Gang
budget
prevention, youth services, yeah.
Right, or does not comply with any, does not fall into the categories that are listed in Measure O, but it's really just to ensure compliance with Measure O. Kind of within those categories, how that gets spent, that's within the council's discretion.
Okay.
Again, as individuals, you're free to speak to council of your concerns.
So
Thank you.
committee member Hinnett, right? Am I saying your name correctly?
Yes.
Good. You'll have an opportunity, all of us have an opportunity when this is taken to city council to make public comments. And that is a great time. You can say what is on your mind and what your concerns are to the city council at that time. And so it's not like you're going to be silenced in any way. It's just that's the process at this time for you to say what your concerns are.
Yeah, but if we approve it now, though, the city council will not, they can't override our decision.
We don't, no, they aren't, we don't get to approve. We can make a recommendation, basically is what I understand, is that we make a recommendation to the city council that, yes, the budget should be approved, or we don't. Either way, but they're ultimately the ones to make the decision.
Right, and I would clarify that what you are saying yes or no to is yes, the expenditures that are listed in the budget all fall within the expenditures that are allowable under Measure O. That's the extent of what your message is to the council. It is not beyond that in terms of what as individuals you might prefer one way or another, or that you have concerns. It is the role of this committee at this point, absent further action by the council, is somewhat limited. And again, it's just to make sure that the budget that's being proposed does not step outside the boundaries of what are allowable expenditures under Measure O.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Were there any more questions for our city attorney? Okay, then I think the next, is there a presentation, Alan, that happens next?
And I'll mention that I will stay in the meeting, but I will go ahead and mute my video, but I'm here if there are any questions.
Thank you very much.
So I believe what we have is, I see that we broke it up into two presentations. So the first presentation was merely the same one that we saw before of all the budget programs. And I would submit that we move forward with that or without that one, since that's already been seen by the committee, and move to the second one, which is the specific to police, which goes into the reductions that they've made as part of this budget.
Okay, great. So could we hear from the police department then, please?
Good afternoon, Chair Bailey and members of the Oversight Committee. Rainer Navarro, Chief of Police. I'm not sure if we're on the same, I think we are. If you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure we had the same slide deck going on. So thank you for having us again today. We spoke back in, I believe, April. And there were some questions that were raised for the police department. And so since that last meeting, I've had the opportunity to speak with a few of the community members who had some questions related to general public safety operations and how we operate within the police department. Some of the questions that I recall from the Oversight Committee included, the police department's community engagement strategies in general, and how Measure O has assisted us in the past. And also general questions on about how Measure O is used in conjunction with the rest of our budget and our training. So as you know, Measure O, when it was voted in, the revenue for the police department was used to enhance police services by adding staff to offer direct services with calls for service and whatnot. With the reduction of Measure O revenue, there has been a significant impact on our community policing events and public safety services. And so this slide here shows you basically two areas that we have seen a drop, and part of this is Measure O, part of it is not. But I think what's important is that you look at both. There were some questions about how do we work both within the general budget and Measure O, and how does it work together? And what we've seen over the last few years is that the city has had a significant budget issue, and with COVID hitting us last year, that really impacted the Measure O tax revenue. So, but to get a really good understanding of what we're not able to do from a community engagement standpoint, I've got to go back a year, and we had to deal with some staffing shortages back in early 2020, late 2019, early 2020. And at that time, because of the staffing shortages in patrol, we had to temporarily disband our gang unit. And we reallocated those detectives back to patrol, and a few of them went over to our violent crimes team, which was suffering a shortage also. With that reduction, our gang unit, they were basically they were our go-to team, not only for the investigative purposes related to gang violence, but they also had a big piece of community engagement. So they were our main team that would go and do the night walks over on West Steel Lane, or I'm sorry, West 9th Street. Annually, when we would when the Violence Prevention Partnership would put their violence prevention weeks on an annual basis. And so our team would go out there, walk with the kids and the families around the block. Our gang unit would also provide instruction to nonprofit entities, community members, and youth during the annual seminars that that would be put on through the Violence Prevention Partnership. They would put on barbecues over at West 9th Street, and they also taught a curriculum to 5th graders called the Gang Reduction Education and Training Program. And with the disbanding of the gang unit, we no longer do those particular community engagement pieces. Then jump forward to this year. This one directly is related to Measure O. Our SRO program has been eliminated, and that is largely due to the revenue reduction and the decisions by the schools to initially suspend the program last year and then put a pause on moving forward. So the school resource officers, they also did a lot of community engagement interaction for our department. They were our lead officers when we did all the school events. So they would do they would do community engagement. They would do assist in some of the school like school meetings and they would be the first ones to go to some of the sporting events. They also taught the GREAT program in the 5th grade classes for both the Santa Rosa City Schools and the Roseland School District. And they also handled the every 15 minutes, which was rotated from one high school to another every year. So they took on the large piece of organizing that and working with the kids, not only for the day event, but also for the, there was a night retreat that the kids would do. So we are no longer doing any of those programs because of the reduction and elimination of the SRO program. And again, they were these two teams were core responses and efforts to some of our violence reduction and interacting and referring kids and families, youth and families to, excuse me, to our referral process. Next slide, please. Sorry about that. So these are some of the community engagement efforts that we are continuing to do. We still have a motor unit, and they do a lot of community engagement. Some of the things that they do, they work with our schools. They will do bike rodeos. They'll assist with walk to school events at the beginning of the year. Our teams, we created a community engagement team, which is a collateral position. So we have about 14 staff members, both sworn and civilian, who are working on a collateral basis to assist with community engagement efforts. So they're not full-time, they're still doing their full-time duties, such as a patrol officer or community service officer or dispatcher. But if we can find the time to reallocate them, or if there's, if we have the possibility of overtime, we will pull a few of them to do some community engagement efforts as we move forward. Some of the things that we've done is Coffee with a Cop. That has been on pause for COVID. We're hoping to reestablish that in the fall. We're also looking at doing additional community listening sessions. This is something that we did about 2 years ago. We did several community empowerment meetings this last year. And I'm working with our Office of Community Engagement to evaluate how we can work with doing more listening sessions in the future as we start opening things up. We also just started our Chiefs Community Ambassador team. I call it CCAT. And that team is hoping will help us with some of these listening sessions. We've actually just had our first meeting, and we discuss policies. They provide feedback on policies. I'm hoping we can meet with community members and do larger meetings in the community with them. So they'll be going through our community police experience, which will happen very soon. And then we also have, with that community police experience, not only do we have a main experience that we do, but we also do a youth engagement experience and a Spanish one, which we are trying to continue. Although our school resource officers were the main liaisons to put those programs on, we still want to continue those. Some of the other things that we still have opportunities to do are to mentor youth. We do have, we're working with Roseland School District, and we've talked about trying to find volunteers within the police department to be mentors for some of their students. Next slide, please. So this is the same slide that you saw last time we met. This is basically a snapshot of our measurable budget. Again, our revenue was reduced this year due to the pandemic, and it remains very uncertain for the future. And so what we did was we eliminated 3 officer positions directly from the SRO program. And you see the salaries equaled about $540,000 with the other reductions. And then there was some additions in or increase for services and supplies. It's about $487,000 reduction for the Measurable, our Measurable budget this year. Next slide. There was a few questions about how our budget related to our overall general fund. And so we put this slide together just to give you a really quick kind of snapshot. Our general fund is about 94% of our total budget, and our Measure is about 6%. So it's a very small percentage. Our general budget or our general fund really pays for the rest of our staff, our issues with facilities, equipment, and training. And our Measure is directly related to the 16 positions and a Measure facility that we have downtown. When it comes to training, we use, or our Measure pays for the salaries for the officers when they attend these trainings. But the trainings are all trainings that we provide. We do have a training fund that it comes out of our general fund. And that's how we pay for our general training, which includes investigative and perishable skills, crisis intervention, procedural justice and implicit bias training, crisis communications, first aid and CPR, and cultural diversity training. In fact, we have a grant that we're working on to try to bring on new cultural diversity training by the end of the year. Next slide, please. So this is another slide that you had seen at the prior meeting. This is just a reminder of where our positions are and how it's allocated. There's 16 positions. 11 of those are sworn. So we have a lieutenant, a sergeant, 9 officers. We have 3 others, civilians that are in the field that they go to what we call the non-suspect calls, burglaries, traffic accidents, that sort of thing. And then we have a communications dispatcher and a records technician who handles some of the internal support services for the police department. Next slide, please. And again, based on the questions that were asked and some of the input, we wanted to give you a snapshot of what our staffing looks like as it relates to our general fund and Measure O. So we have 235 general fund positions and 16 Measure O, total of 251 positions. To give you an idea of what that looks like over the years and kind of and how we've used Measure O. In 2006, we had 190 sworn officers and 91 civilian staff. That was about 281. I think it's 281 if I'm doing the math right. Total staff members. We've have gone down significantly from since then. Since 2018, we have lost a total of 15 and a half positions, 7 sworn and 8.5 civilian positions due to budget reductions. And then this year, part of the reductions that we are seeing are the 3 Measure O SROs that have to be reduced due to the revenue cuts. In 2006, we were responding to about 130,000 calls for service. Now we're responding to over 140,000 calls for service. So we are staying very busy. We're using Measure O to provide direct service in the area of our patrol teams, our downtown enforcement team, and our traffic unit as they continue to address calls for service in the field. And next slide, please. And so that's the end of our presentation. Again, what I tried to do was put together a few slides to try to answer some of the questions and input from the two committee members who met with me, and then some of the information that came from the last meeting. So I hope that clarifies it a little bit on what we do and how it's kind of how we use it along with our general fund. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And I see my administrative services officer, Pam Lawrence, is also on the call too. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. Do you mind, whoever's doing the slides, do you mind going in a slide that had the youth experience, some of the gang prevention and youth services? Do you mind going on that slide?
Yes, give us just a moment. We're pulling it up. Thank you.
The ones that we're not doing anymore, sir, or the ones that we are?
The ones that you are doing.
That would be slide 4.
Awesome, great. I wanted to ask, so what we're looking at, this is pretty much, this is the kind of gang prevention and intervention that the police department is taking part in right here, what I'm looking at?
No. So I think maybe one of the things to clarify is, so I was asked, based on my recollection of the questions, I was asked to give an idea of what we do in community engagement in general. Some of these do play a part in with gang and violence prevention, but gang reduction and gang intervention, I think that falls more under the recreation and parks piece of it. It does play a part for us when we do gang enforcement. This is not enforcement, this is community engagement. So based on my feedback after our discussion, it was my understanding there was some interest in hearing what in general do we do and what are we continuing to try to do even with the reduction of Measure O. And so these play into, some of these are traffic related, bike rodeos and walk to school events. Our traffic team which several of them are Measure O funded. They take a part in that. Our Measure O officers and staff, they do take part in Coffee with a Cop, in our community listening sessions. They are school resource officers. They used to do the Cinco de Mayo booth. We're committed to continue working and providing staff to go out to those events when they come up. And so this is more about how Measure O helps us continue to do community engagement activities.
Right. And then could you speak more to that youth Spanish and community experience?
Sure. So the community police experience, it used to be called the Citizens Police Academy. We wanted to take the term citizen out of it because we felt that we didn't want it to deter anybody or discourage anybody from signing up. So we have, it's about an 8-week class that we do. It's one week or 1 day a week for 8 weeks. I know committee member Yvette Minor has done it. And it basically provides an overview of our police department operations and what we do in different areas. So it goes over both patrol, investigations, dispatch, community events, records, and it gives you a broad overview of what the police department does. And so what we also did was we had about a 5-week program for youth. So people in high school, 16, 17, 18 years old. We've actually condensed that into a 1-week program. So it's 5 days for 1 week. And then we also have a Spanish program that we do. We try to do it once a year, and it's for Spanish speaking community members. And the last time we did it, we partnered with the Roseland School District, and we did it over at the Roseland High School or Roseland University Prep. And we put it on, and I believe it was a 4-week program where they got the same information, and it was in Spanish.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Navarro. We really appreciate the presentation. We didn't have the other departments do their presentation again because there was no issue with those. So I think it's time now we can need to call for a vote or a motion, motion to approve the Measure O budgets for 2021-22.
Oh, could I add some, just my feedback before we go into the vote?
Sure.
Yeah, I think I wanted to say to the other committee members, I think that even though I guess it is up to the city council to decide, I do still think from Miss Gallagher's explanation in regards to making sure that the directive in Measure O is still being enforced, plus the making sure that the expenditures are legal. I still with Measure O, definitely with the for the folks that were around, when it was passed, and its mission really in regards to that gang prevention and intervention. As you all know, people that live in Santa Rosa, we've had, if people paying attention to the news, we've had a lot of quote unquote gang affiliated shootings and altercations. And, and some of them have, ended up very violent, and it's the beginning of the summer, and as we all know, I think we have a burden that we need to feel, because this Measure O was really, was looked at as a godsend to decrease our gang prevention. Decrease our gang affiliations and violence that's happening in our cities, particularly amongst our youth. And, I had an opportunity to go speak to someone that is like a case manager that's paid through Measure O. And, for folks that don't know, the case managers, they go and work with young people to possibly give them work experience opportunities, internships, individuals that live in certain quote unquote gang prevalent areas, and, maybe, could be affected by violence that has occurred in the past. But he's told me that much of their resources have dwindled, due to the decrease in funding. And I think it just really behooves us to really possibly even see if city council can make a decision on this funding, because I'm from with this discussion, I'm still, I'm gonna give my nay vote, because I don't believe that the things that I've heard today really answer my true questions in regards to how is the police department using their funds that's funding 16 salaried individuals to aggressively trying to reduce our quote unquote gang affiliated youth, and providing them opportunities of engagement to really stay away from the streets and not engage in violence. So and I definitely think that we should really take this vote seriously, and maybe in the future, maybe just not now, just really understanding how much power we do have being on this committee to really decide what opportunities do we want the most vulnerable of our community members to have. And I don't think we're doing it now. I definitely think that us just voting real quick after hearing someone's presentation we're not doing what our community really needs us to do. So I just wanted to say that spiel.
Okay, well, I appreciate your comments, and I think if no one else has a comment to make, I think it is time that we need to make a vote, and I hope that you'll take your comments to city council.
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
I had a really quick comment before we voted. I'm sorry, I had my hand raised.
I
I just wanted to say,
sorry about.
no worries. I just wanted to say, hopefully with the pandemic going away, that the money comes back into the fund, and that some of these things that are currently missing, I'm hoping that they will be able to continue, because they're very valuable to the committee as a whole. And so as the funding comes back, and I encourage every one of us in the committee to go take a look at what is funded through Measure O with all the different departments. Once you see those particular agencies and talk to those particular groups of people, you'll find out more about what's actually housed under Measure O and what is actually out here for the public, that is free resources that is out here for the public. So I encourage every one of us to take the time to go look at those that is out here currently. And as far as if there is I see there's a hand, my vote is yes for passage of Measure O. I see Sue hand.
Sue?
I just wanted to suggest, do you want to take public comment before taking a vote?
It's typically not done, but we can do that. I mean, we have never done that before. We usually take public comment after, but.
After your vote?
Yeah.
Okay. It is a better practice under the Brown Act to take the public comment before the vote.
Do we have public that would like to do that?
Thank you.
Thank you.
A countdown timer will appear for the convenience of the speaker and viewers. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand over Zoom. If you're dialing from a telephone, please dial 9* to raise your hand. We received no emails regarding 4.1, and I see no hands raised. There's a panelist. Manza.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to address kind of what Elias, am I pronouncing it right?
Elias, yeah, you got it, bro.
I think he's, I mean, there's no way to measure O, right? I mean, how do you, I think the root of it is, what you're alluding to is, how do we measure the progress of Measure O? Is that kind of what you're alluding to, Elliot? Elias?
Yeah, definitely. And how, and yes, How was it
can't-
measured?
Yes. How do you measure how effective this, the funding has been? Can someone, Ellen, Chief Navarro, someone who's Yvette, someone who's spent more time on this committee, or who was there initially with Measure O, can someone provide us with, an explanation of how we measure O in terms of effectiveness?
I can try to give you a quick anecdotal. I don't have any information with me at this time. I do know that we did go through a period of we have gone through a period of violence reduction and gang reduction for several years. I think us as a city has been very successful in using the what at first was the Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force to what is now the Violence Prevention Partnership, and in the roles that they play. Several years ago, they went to a more of a health model rather than just gangs, and to continue to continue their efforts because there was a realization that there was more. Violence impacted more than just youth and gangs. But the only reason they were able to make that step is because we had such a success in the area of gangs. And, it's, we're still, we're seeing an uptick. Gangs hasn't gone away, but there has been some tremendous work that's been done in the community. And with the work of nonprofits, the Violence Prevention Partnership, which we are a part of, the police department is a part of, and we've worked very closely for several years. Some of the things that we created in the past have been crisis teams who, when there's a shooting and we're investigating it. What we've seen, it's been very helpful to have nonprofits who are available to go out after the shooting and deal with the trauma of the community. And so that's where we've really seen some of the tremendous efforts. And it's been a model for us to move into some of the other areas of some of the social issues that we're having. In fact, I think that we're modeling some of our homeless issues and how we address it based on what we've done in violence prevention. So it's more anecdotal, and I can just tell you from my experience because I was part of this as a gang detective in the early 2000s, a gang sergeant, and then now as a lieutenant, captain, and now the chief. And so I've seen it on different levels, and I think it has worked, but I don't have all of the actual raw data to provide you information on. We're just a component of it, sir.
You said raw data, but what type of data?
Again, I think we've seen over the years, we have seen violence go down. And so I think I think a big part of that is the work that we've done with our stakeholders. So again, I don't have that with me, but I know we had several years where things were starting to go down. So I think it was very helpful.
I wanted to ask a follow-up question on that. With that data, how do we know it's connected to Measure O?
So I think that, so we work very closely again with the Violence Prevention Partnership. I think that's something that, they put out reports, and I think, I'm not sure if it's annually, and this might be a better question for one of the other members, but there's a strategic plan for the Violence Prevention Partnership, and they do updates, and they have to provide information because of the grants that are given out to the nonprofits. So that's really all the information that I have.
I got you for sure. So you don't have any numbers specifically that the police department, specifically with Measure O funding, has lowered, I guess, quote unquote, gang violence or things that sort.
Well, so we used to, we have data on arrests, we have data on citations. The things that we haven't done really well is to keep data on all the community engagement that we've done. And those are some of the things that we've learned over this last year that we want to do better at. And so that's something that we want to do. We have some general data about community engagement, but it's a little bit harder to kind of identify and interpret. So we're trying to do a better job there.
Can I just jump in really quick? Is anybody in the Zoom that is from the partnership that can talk about the portrait that we have that comes out every couple of years? That's where the data is. They work with the police department, they do a collaboration, and then they put out this report and they talk about the reductions, how many people they've helped through the Measure O funds. So that's where a lot of that data lies. So is there anybody from the partnership? I see Geraldine. I believe she might be able to answer that.
I'd like to jump in with a procedural question first, sorry to interrupt. After our last meeting, I tried to do a little bit of legwork and figure out what the rules of order are. So what we're discussing now isn't on the agenda, and there's a motion to approve. I defer to Ellen and to Yvette and to Sue, but is our conversation sort of going out of bounds here, just from a procedural standpoint?
That's a good question. Is the city attorney still on?
I mean, if someone asks a question like Manza did, I think that, he's asking this question because he needs clarification before he votes. So I can make a motion to not vote so he can have his answer question, or anybody else has more, but I don't think, really.
Sue, go ahead.
Sure, if I may, I do think you're getting a little far from the agenda item, but again, to the extent that the questions relate specifically to the vote on approval on confirmation of the budget, that is allowable. But to get too far into discussion of the details, you are exactly right that would be beyond the scope of the agenda item.
Thank you. Good question.
If I can make a quick suggestion, I think the policy teams, Magali, maybe you can tell them or not, but I think they are public, so they can go. Those can be attended to get more information on the partnership.
Yes, and also I would love to offer myself as a resource of someone to have a conversation with in terms of the Violence Prevention Partnership. My name is Margarita Deis, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement. I also oversee the Violence Prevention Partnership. And we are really focusing on, we have Geraldine here from our team as well. We're really focusing on this year and moving forward, being more intentional about community input. With our scorecard that's going to be coming out hopefully by the end of this year, that is where we really need community input. And there's the scorecard that came out, I believe, had information on there from 2012, and it is a bit outdated. But I think what's important to note now is that the violence we're seeing in our community may not be exactly the same violence that we were seeing, 2012. And we really need to update our scorecard to reflect the uptick in domestic violence, the uptick in other violence related to inequities in our community. So, I would offer, I'm going to leave my my email, my contact information in the chat box. I don't know if that's like a feature on here. Yeah. And if you could please contact me, I would love to discuss more about how we want to take this violence prevention partnership and make it really more about what community needs are, and focusing on the nonprofits that are able to do the direct services, and creating sort of that bridge and also working with our police department on, the areas that are more pertaining to safety as, infrastructure, or safety as these other issues, and also talk to you more about the community empowerment plan, where we talked a lot to community. And actually, I think you may have participated in one of our sessions with us, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I would love to talk more about, how violence prevention would like to get some real estate in community in those ways moving forward.
Thank you, Magali. So where are we? I think we're back at the motion that was made. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mark, and do we have a second on that motion?
I second.
Okay, and then we need to vote. So who, the yays and the nays? So let's start with who votes yes on the, I'm sorry, I've gotten lost to where we are on the agenda. Okay.
Oh my God. Chair Bailey, I can go ahead and call a vote, and after your name is called, if you would just state your vote, that would be appreciated. So I'll start with Chair Bailey.
Yes.
Vice Chair Minor.
Yes.
Member Hinnant.
Nay.
Member Atkinson.
Yes.
Member Stapp.
Yes.
And Member Rottermall.
Abstain, actually.
All right, let the vote recall that that passes with 4 yeses and Member Rottermall abstaining. Chair Bailey, it looks like you're muted.
Sorry, I thought I unmuted myself. So now we go down to item 4.2, the proposed implementation plan. And we need to review and approve by motion the implementation plan. Is there a presentation now?
Yes, we do have 3 brief slides, and I can give a very quick overview of those. Part of Measure O in the expenditure plan is that we, way back when Measure O was started, we created an implementation plan as was required by the ordinance. It's a little bit of a misnomer now to call it that, since we implemented Measure O spending almost 20 years ago. But this is what it is, and what we do each year is we lay out what the budget is, and the implementation plan and the expenditures are tied directly from the budget into this plan. And the plan also shows subsequent years, which are projections. So what is at place? So every year, the committee would need to approve the implementation plan that goes along with the budget. Now, in many cases, if there are no changes to the plan, in other words, if positions or equipment or anything else stays the same, then there's no need to change the plan and there's no need to vote on it. But this year, because the police department did need to eliminate 3 police officers, that resulted in a change in their implementation plan. And as such, the committee will vote on that. And essentially what you're voting on is that just like the budget, that these services and supplies and personnel costs fall within the expenditures of the plan, which they do. And you're mostly just telling the council that we are moving from 19 officers where they were before to 16, which is what's, or 16 FTE total in Measure O, which is what's going today. So that is it. There was no, we have the police plan up now. There were no changes to the other ones. You can look at those. They're right here for your viewing, and they were part of the agenda packet as well. So with that, if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them if I can.
Okay. Thank you, Alan. Appreciate that. No questions? I see that Monza has his hand raised.
This is with regards to the annual report. I'm just wondering if we can include in more detail the accomplishments, the coffee with the cop, you know, that those types of things. I'm wondering if those, because when I look into the annual report and it says, you know, it does say in terms of measuring, it does say violence since this time has decreased, or arrest has decreased since the implementation of Measure O. But there's more to this Measure O. There's quite a few violence prevention programs. I would personally, I think that people would also benefit from having more detail about positive things that have came out of Measure O, especially within the more than just the only thing that it had positive under violence prevention. When I look, it says, okay, graduation rates have increased by a certain amount. If we could get those other programs within the annual report in a little bit more detail, maybe some more numbers about positive things, more detail about coffee with the cop and the community engagement, I think that would better serve the people when they go to review, you know, what has Measure O accomplished for the community. Thanks.
Since my hand is up, I guess I can go.
Oh, I didn't see your hand. There you are.
I just wanted to second all of the comments being made about really wanting good metrics of success here too.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Can I just make so what we're talking about is the implementation plan. And so we're, you know, to talk about the comments that committee member Atkinson made regarding the annual report is fine. We can note that and have that, or bring it up as part of the next meeting agenda item potentially. But right now, the item before you is the implementation plan. So questions should really be directed toward that. Otherwise, if there are no questions, we can have a motion and move forward. We need to make sure that we kind of keep close to the topic at hand.
Okay, I just have a question. I was looking at the implementation plan and it goes into the negative. And is that just because it would be coming to an end, and then that's why it's going to the negative in pretty large numbers?
Yeah. So, and that is on, for which one is that?
I guess it would be the last one. And
the violence one. Well, let me try to.
There's negative 2,437,000. Right. So whichever slide that one is, yeah. I think it's the last one.
Yeah. So the way this works is each year we develop a fund balance based on this, and these are special revenue funds, and as such, they exist as their own fund. Right, so they are supported by the revenues that come in into that, and also the at least in its current iteration, Measure O would sunset at the end of fiscal year 25. So what we have is thank you. I think that was the slide.
Yeah, it was fire.
Mhm.
I see it at the top. It was fire department.
Yeah. Okay. So what we have, so some of the funds have fund balance and are able to run at a higher annual deficit and pull into that fund balance. And the idea is that at the end of Measure O, so at the end of fiscal year 25, that you would have no fund balance left in any of the three Measure O funds. That is because they're designed to have the money out on the street. Really, it's not something that you would save up. Now, fire department is a different situation in that they are actually actively trying to save money there to build fire stations. So what you might see are changes in how they do their budget in order to still meet their performance needs, but also to be able to save up money to put toward fire stations. And that's a little bit different than what police does or what violence prevention does. But the whole idea of the out years of this implementation plan is to show you not only where you are in the current year and what the current uses and sources of money are, but then to show how we would drain that down to zero, to have zero fund balances by the sunset period of Measure O. Now, if Measure O is extended to a period, then obviously we change that budgeting strategy going forward. But right now, we're just looking at all the information that we have in hand, which is Measure O comes to end in 2025. We have services that once that revenue goes away, that we would have the fund close out. So that's what that is.
I saw it after you started explaining it. I saw it on the paper. So thank you. And
Yes.
I'm ready to vote if nobody else have any questions.
We're actually going to need to take public comment first and then we can vote.
Oh, I had a question about that, but to the person that was Mr. Alton, I wanted to ask, how do we keep these departments accountable for carrying out the expenditure in which we're seeing right now? Is there any type of audit that occurs?
The city does an annual audit, yes.
Okay, great. And I'm guessing that includes the Measure O funding?
Includes all city funds.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Not seeing any more questions, so I'd like to make a call for public comment. Are there people waiting in the public?
I am seeing no hands raised, and there were no emails received for public comment.
Thank you. Then it is time again to call for a motion to approve the implementation plan. And then we have a motion. Someone will make that motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second, great, thank you. And then we need to vote.
And I'll do the roll call for the vote. Chair Bailey,
Yes,
Vice Chair Minor,
Yes.
Member Hennett,
Nay.
Member Atkinson,
Yes.
Member Stapp,
Yes.
and Member Rottermall.
Abstain.
And that passes with 4-5. And I'll turn that back over to you, Chair Bailey.
thank you. This information that we've all been presented with today and at the last meeting will be presented to the city council. I don't know the date of that. Does someone on the staff know the date of when that council presentation will be?
I believe at this point it will be part of the budget adoption on June 22nd.
Okay, on June 22nd?
Yes.
Okay, so when I get that specific information, if we could send it out to everyone on the committee so that they can be there if they'd like to make comments. there'll be room for public comment. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. January 22nd or June 22nd, excuse me, is
Okay.
when we have the budget public hearing. It's a public hearing, and all are welcome to make comments.
Great. And so I encourage everyone, each one of the committee members, if you have strong feelings about any of what's been discussed, that you come and you share your information with your points of view with the city council. That's what this public comment is for. So I hope to see you all there. I intend to be there. And thank you to the staff and to everyone here for their hard work. And I think we can call the meeting to an end.
So the next meeting agenda item is really just one particular one, which would be the annual report, which happens sometime in fall. I believe there was some notes from committee member Atkinson, and since this is recorded, so we'll have those, and we can go and put that out to the different program managers to ensure that they give a rather robust set of accomplishments, and as we go forward, and that those notes were noted. Thank you.
You know, I did have a conversation today that might be, I know it would be interesting to everyone in the committee. Is Kelly Magnuson still on this call or on this meeting? Kelly had mentioned that she had heard member Atkinson bring up information about, there's Kelly, now about the STEM program. And she told me about something today that I think you might all like to hear about.
Hi, this is Kelly. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon, committee members. I just wanted to follow up about the question about a STEM program. And I think it was committee member Atkinson that brought it up. So we are very fortunate. We were able to find a program called Robotics for All, and we're going to be implementing that later this summer. And hopefully we'll continue it on in our after-school programs through the fall. It's a free program. They ask for a donation, so we'll be able to give them a donation. And we think it's going to be a really nice addition to our after-school program. So thank you for the suggestion. We have found a specific program that we think will meet that need. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Kelly. Really appreciate it. And all the work that your staff has done to accommodate this year. This past year has been really hard for all the young people out there and families in particular. And I think the Recreation and Park staff has done a tremendous job of trying to be helpful and flexing. And I really appreciate it. I know the committee members do too. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, can I ask something about the next meeting before we close?
Sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, obviously to any of the other committee members, I think that with this other meeting with the city council, I think that is a good opportunity to voice concerns if you all have any. And in regards to my nay vote, I think with the conversation I had with the chief, I feel like we talked about ideas to incentivize officers to engage in activities that could lead to gang intervention, prevention, things that could lead to officers engaging more, which would obviously give them more responsibilities. But I thought that, it was very important, but obviously things like that weren't discussed today in the presentation. So if folks, are available for the city council meeting, I'd urge you all to go there. Maybe they'll have, some more suggestions that could be implemented. And I think that, I hope and pray for our youth that are quote unquote gang affiliated. And I hope that, these funds do work in their favor. And I hope we feel that burden. And, I just hope that, we won't have to burden any bloodshed in our communities due to our decisions. So, yeah, that's what I just want to see y'all at the next meeting.
Thank you.
And it looks like Danica, she has her hand raised as well.
Yeah, I know people will tell me if this is the right time to make this particular comment, but I did just want to echo some of the comments around metrics of success and just say, I do think from my understanding and what I have reviewed so far, and I look forward to reviewing more information if there is more, it doesn't seem like we have great systems in place for really measuring whether or not Measure O is living up to the expectations of the people who voted on it in the ways that they envisioned it to play out. And I recognize that perhaps the funds are being spent permissibly within their allotments and percentages, but I abstain in part because I don't actually feel like I have enough information to say that I think that these funds are actually being spent in accordance with the spirit of what people voted on. And I do think that there's different ways of interpreting what the responsibility is and what's permissible. There's measurements, but then there's also like, is it permissible to be continuing to spend funds without great measurements of whether or not they're achieving what we were hoping they would achieve? And so I think that that should be more maybe within the purview of this oversight committee, and that perhaps we do encourage city council to give us more of that authority to be involved in making sure that what we're doing is what we want to be doing and making sense. And perhaps that it has more of a space in the reports and just like really solid metrics that we can ensure that the next time this comes around on the ballot, that voters can make an informed decision about whether or not they want to continue Measure O in its current form or in a different form. So that was it.
Thank you. Okay, I think we can call the meeting to a close. Appreciate everyone being here and your hard work, and we will hopefully see you on the 22nd.
Really quick, do we need to make a motion to close the meeting, to adjourn the meeting?
Is that what I'm supposed to do? And I didn't.
I'm asking.
Good question. Am I supposed to be doing that?
You do not need to have a
No.
motion to
Okay.
adjourn. The chair may adjourn.
Thanks. All right, take care, everybody.
See everyone.
There. Bye.
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 Bye.